Now you and I linked up because of Willie. Now, are you guys cubicle mates or share an office together? How
We're on
close
the
are you?
seventh floor of Smith Tower here in Charlotte, North Carolina, Charlotte Motor Speedway, and he's right down the hall from me, and so I lean on him, for video support and things like that.
Good friend of mine. Good friend of mine. And when he said, we have a general in my office, he's been to, and I was like, really? Well, let's get him on the podcast here. And then I read your bio. I was like, yeah, absolutely. Let's have him on. So sir, I'm really glad that we can finally do this.
I'm glad we can too, and thank you for your service. I'm a big fan of the Marines that turned the whole western part of Iraq over to Mad Dog Mattis and the First Marine Division, and Jim Conway was there as the first MEF commander.
Roger that, sir. Yeah, I was General Conway's videographer for his last Marine Corps birthday message, and I was Amos's videographer after that. So Conway, I wish General Conway could narrate my life.
There you go. I'm actually going to be with General Pete Pace and General Jim Amos tomorrow night at the Veterans Bridge Home salute. What is it? Star Spangled Salute they're having.
Oh, outstanding. That's outstanding, sir. Well, sir, the first question we always have here on Borne to Battle is, where and when did you know that military service was going to be the next step in your life? And I ask you in that way because for a lot of veterans, especially in Vietnam, they didn't have the choice to go in themselves. So for you, when did you know that was going to be the next step in your life?
Well, my dad was with Bell Telephone Laboratories, and he had a gentleman working for him by the name of Al Walser, who was a class of 1952 out of West Point. And so in my late sophomore year, early junior year, I learned about West Point and said, hey, that sounds like a great place to go to school. And then Bobby Knight and Dave Bliss and Don DeVoe, basketball coaches, came down. One of them, Dave Bliss, came down here to see me play basketball. And
I was going to ask you if it was the Bobby Knight.
The Bobby Knight. But anyway, Dave Bliss came down and watched me, and I was lucky enough to score 25 points against Parkland. Couldn't miss. I mean, I'd be falling down on my butt after a rebound. I'd throw it back up there to go in. One of those kind of nights, And so I went up to play basketball at West Point, and that's when I probably knew. I went to R.J. Reynolds High School in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and had pretty good academics, but not as advanced as a lot of people going to West Point. And so I went in as a plebe and did quite good in mathematics and science, and stayed there 4 years. And I was high enough in my class. I graduated 69 out of 720, and I was high enough to choose any branch I wanted to, but I chose infantry because I said, I don't know much about the military, but let me learn from the infantry, and if I like it, I'll stay with it, and ended up staying 33 plus years.
33 years. I did not know that you played basketball at West Point. Did you have other offers from other schools?
I probably would go to NC State, but wouldn't play basketball. And I only played plebe year, freshman year of basketball. Had a knee operation. I played 4 years of golf, and I was captain of the West Point golf team. So
very good, very good. I was wondering because, I mean, I don't think people understand West Point. It is one of the top schools, and a lot of people like I've talked to that have been athletes at that school. It's like, when you have offers from other school, but you have an offer from West Point, is it even a decision from an academic standpoint to even think about any other school at the time?
Yeah, it was no decision for me. And actually, I had a high school sweetheart. I left in Winston-Salem, but we kept together over the years and got married.
Really?
We did. Yep.
Long distance. That's awesome to hear, sir. It's awesome to hear. Well, sir, I'm not even getting into Haiti. You participated and deployed to numerous operations, big and small. I want to start with the two Panamanian operations. I didn't know that there were two operations. I mean, as a Marine, I only knew of Operation Just Cause. What was Nimrod Dancer? And, I always love how military names their operations, like Nimrod Dancer. Like, who thinks of that as a name?
Well, that's DOD that thinks those things up. And so when the 7th Infantry Division Light was established, it was primarily for contingency operations because it doesn't take very many Air Force aircraft to get us there.
Roger.
And so Noriega was down there threatening actually some of our school buses and our forces down in Panama. And so we were activated and deployed during Operation Nimrod Dancer to basically secure the Panama Canal, to reinforce our forces down there and to
Mm-hmm.
maybe do something that would provoke Noriega and allow us to come in there and take them out. And I was down there for 90 days. Actually, I assumed command of the 2nd Battalion, 9th Infantry Regiment, Manchu, in Fort Davis, Panama.
Wow.
And then I stayed down there through August and then was replaced. And then the one you probably heard of most, Operation Just Cause. We went down there from deployed down there. 82nd Airborne Division went down there. We worked for the 82nd Airborne Division in Panama City. I was out at Noriega's house with some special operators looking for him.
Yeah.
Actually, I was able to get a couple of his business cards, and I got one in my back pocket of Manuel Noriega's business card.
Interesting.
I gave one to every senior leader in the battalion I commanded, officer and enlisted, which is something, as a remembrance to the folks you go to combat with. And when I went to Iraq, Operation Iraqi Freedom, I bought dinars that had Saddam Hussein's face on it that you probably saw some of.
Yes, sir.
And I wrote my name and Operation Iraqi Freedom across it, and commanding General 82nd Airborne Division at the time. And I gave those mementos to the senior leaders that worked for us down there in Iraq.
Very good. Very good. Interesting. Very interesting. You were also the commanding general of Multinational Division North. Is that a NATO post?
It is a NATO post. It's
Gotcha.
Was Operation Joint Forge,
Mm-hmm.
and Multinational Division North was up near Tuzla, Eagle Base. Probably a lot of people know it by, but I had Russians working for us, had Turkish, had Danish, I had an American infantry battalion from the 25th Division working for us, and
You had Russians.
had Russians that were in what the old part of, on the Serbia side of Bosnia. And I kept on trying to get them to go out and do night patrols. And so I would have a forcing function. I would go out on a Friday night and walk a patrol with the squad just to get them out working, because some of them, would stay in their barracks with their vodka and not do much at night. And so I use it as a forcing function to go out and walk with units on Friday night and get out there and see what they're doing. And I did it with the Russians, but it took a while for them to, because they had to go back up their chain of command to basically, they didn't take my orders immediately. They had to go back up chain of command and ask if permission to do it. And so that's how it worked.
Interesting. The general had to go on his own patrol. Wow.
I did the same thing in Iraq, believe it or not. Once it kind of quieted down, we were fighting the insurgency.
Yes, sir.
I'd go out with company commanders back then, and I'd walk patrols with them just to make sure that we just didn't do everything by day and let the enemy do it at night. I'd make sure we got out there at night, as you well know, have probably taken some video of.
Yes, sir. Operation Joint Forge in Bosnia. Not many folks know how large of a conflict the breakup of Yugoslavia was. My family's from Yugoslavia, so my grandfather, kind of taught me about Yugoslavia and where we came from. What was our role there, specifically Joint Forge?
Well, our role was to maintain, I guess, security and keep kind of a lid on an ethnic turmoil between the Serbs and the Muslims. And so that was what we were there for. Matter of fact, Srebrenica massacre, we would take 100 buses of the women who lost loved ones at the battery factory there, and we would ensure their security going to visit the area where their family members were killed, slaughtered by the Serbs back then, and make sure they had safe passage.
Wow.
But it's pretty much what we call ethnic cleansing back then, and that's what we were putting the lid on, so there could be no more ethnic cleansing.
Not many people know exactly how far that whole thing went, the ethnic cleansing, except for folks that went there. But yeah, that's I think from a military history standpoint, people should probably look at that one a little bit more. Now, so you were also the CG during the 82nd, during the time of the Iraq invasion. At what point did you know that, yeah, we are going to cross this line of demarcation and this thing is actually going to kick off? Because I want to know, like, yeah, I was going to say at the general level, at what point did they know?
Well, we, for all the forces that went over there to get ready to do this, we used to do all the rehearsal, the rock drills, the sand table exercises. And so the 82nd Airborne Division was kind of late into that tip fid to deploy over there. And I was at a meeting where General McKiernan, the ground force commander, briefing all the division commanders with General Shinseki and General Jack Keane.
Mm.
And they were up there talking about it and talking about here we're going to be crossing the Borne about now. And so General Keane asked, well, what happens if Saddam Hussein gets assassinated or if he decides to go live with Gaddafi? And he turned, General Keane, it was just kind of a rhetorical question out there. And he turned to General Shinseki, chatted a few seconds, and he turned to me and he said, Swannack, you need to have a deployable, airdroppable force in Kuwait before we kick this thing off, because we have to 650 kilometers. The only thing that can get there are you and the Rangers. So that's why we were positioned in Baghdad. So we were right underneath the tower at the Kuwait International Airport, all our equipment rigged and ready to go. And I went into our dining facility one evening, and that's when President George Bush said, Saddam, you get out of there in 96 hours or we're coming. And at that point in time, that was the point in time I finally figured we're going to go.
Sir, I love that. I love that everyone, I mean, it took the president on TV saying 96 hours, just even for the, a 2-star general to go, yeah, this thing is actually going.
Right. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I thought a show of force would be enough, but it wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. With the current conflict going out in Ukraine, some people are looking back at the invasion and seeing from a logistical standpoint, what a huge feat it was. I mean, right now Russia's running out of gas invading a country adjacent to it. Meanwhile, we were able to invade a country and from half a world away, almost flawlessly.
Right. Our logisticians should get most of the credit for that. I mean, we had good strategists and operational planners and things like that to put the whole thing together. But I basically say a logistician will cause a whole war to stop if they don't do their job. I mean, an operator might get a bunch of people killed, but a logistician causes the whole war to come to a halt if we don't get the fuel, the ammo, and the meals, the food, and all that stuff positioned and ready to go.
Bullets, beans, and Band-Aids. I mean, you're seeing it right now. Ukraine kind of came to a screeching halt when that huge convoy didn't get what it needed. And so, right. Yeah, you take a look at that. I just think it's amazing. You take a look at that and you take a look at what the U.S. forces were able to accomplish half a world away, not a country adjacent to it. And we weren't going into Mexico, kind of like what they're doing. We were literally half a world away and we're able to accomplish that. I just think it's amazing. Right.
And what you saw with the Russians when they came to a screeching halt is vividly what we're talking about. You got to have the logisticians at the rearming, refuel points on time, and the operators got to get there, or it's not going to work. It's not going to. Everything's going to get bogged down.
Yeah, very good. Well, sir, while you were in, give me either a best friend or your greatest mentor.
Well, I was blessed to have a lot of good leaders to work for, but probably the best mentor I ever had was a gentleman by the name of Huba Vastasega. Now, I'm
That's
not sure.
Quite a name.
You never heard of that name. He retired as a brigadier general. He was the co-author of the air-land battle doctrine from the mid-'80s that served us well in Desert Shield and Desert Storm, and also in Panama with swift action, 21 targets in one night. But he was the Manchu commander back when I was his operations officer as S3, and then later, before he left, his executive officer. And he taught me a lot about airland battle, about doctrine, about leadership in combat. He's a Vietnam veteran with the 173rd Airborne Brigade in Vietnam.
Gotcha.
And he was just a wonderful mentor. Now, the one thing about him is when you understand you're working for somebody with that much brilliance, you have to figure out a way to slow him down because, I mean, even I working pretty hard, and that's probably the hardest I ever worked too.
Mm.
I could never keep up with them. And so I had to get him to understand when I'd brief him on Friday afternoons what's going on. I'd have to ask him for a moratorium on good ideas because he was just brilliant. And if I didn't slow him down, we'd never keep up with him.
I think that's amazing. You asked for a moratorium on good idea fairies ideas. We call them good idea fairies now. It's that I got to keep that in mind. I'm still in DC, sir. So, I hear the good idea fairies all the time still to this day. So I'm actually going to steal that from you. A moratorium on the good ideas. Very good.
That's a good one. You got when you're dealing with somebody brilliant, you got your pencil and your paper there, and you're just trying to keep up with them with that, and you say, "Hey, hold on a second, I can't keep up. Let's slow down a little bit.
Let's accomplish one before we go on to the next." Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. You said he taught you a lot about leadership. If you were to pick one thing about in leadership, in combat leadership, maybe what would it be?
I think it would be the projection of the leader. And the attitude of the leader, because more often than not, you have to be a motivator to be a leader. I mean, you've got to have some good common sense. You got to listen to people, but you got to be in the right frame of mind and attitude that people who work for you are willing to do and get the job done.
Yes, sir.
And so I've served for some commanders who are very ruthless and very tough and demanding. And that's not the kind of leadership that I learned from Huba Vastasega. It's more of a caring, compassionate servant leadership. And I think that's probably the most important thing. I'm still serving today, our veterans community. And I think it's just a servant's heart is what the center of the best thing he taught me.
Very good. Very good. What year did you retire, sir?
I retired in 2005.
2005.
After commanding the 82nd Airborne Division, I got the 18th Airborne Corps ready to go to Iraq to be the 3-star headquarters, working for General Casey, who had come in there. And then I retired. It was one because I wanted to get my marriage intact, because if you saw that timeline, I was in Bosnia and then I went to the 82nd and I went to Iraq. So I wasn't around for a while. Yeah. And before that, I was a commanding general at Fort Polk, Louisiana. And that's kind of a busy job and never around because you're always out there training forces. And so I wasn't around for a while. So I had to work on my marriage, one. And two, probably read somewhere, I'm not a big fan of Rumsfeld. And I would have had to get another star promoted to lieutenant general. I would have had to go do basically an interview with Donald Rumsfeld. And I wasn't a big fan of his. His staff asked me when I was in the western part of Iraq in Fallujah, which you've probably heard of.
Oh, as a Marine, absolutely.
Different kind of town, different kind of city of about 350,000. On the outside is Highway 1 that goes around the outside of Fallujah. Mm-hmm. And a convoy of paratroopers were out there, and somebody tried to blow them up, but it didn't work. And the paratroopers basically surrounded them in a little hamlet nearby of 3 houses, and they were in one house. And rather than, kick down the door and get some people shot, I said, yeah, go ahead and use an AC-130 gunship. I mean, talk them out. If they can come out, fine. If they don't, use an AC-130 gunship. And basically did, and there were 4 dead. And a Reuters reporter asked me about that. And I said, well, I learned something along the way, and it's how to fight. And it was from Viscount Slim, and it was use a sledgehammer to crush a walnut. And that's what I quoted. Well, his staff asked me what I meant by that. Donald Rumsfeld's staff called me and asked about that. And I said, well, have you ever read the book, Defeat and a Victory by Viscount Slim in the Burma campaign? And when you do, you probably won't have to ask me the answer to it. But when you're confronted by the enemy who's trying to kill you, don't put somebody's arm behind their back and say, fight him with one arm. We just don't do it that way. We use overwhelming combat power, trying to minimize collateral damage, but get the job done and save as many paratroopers as we can. Keep them alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, that's why after I retired, I was kind of basically saying that Donald Rumsfeld, you're responsible for policy and budget. Don't get into the warfighting business because that's not your. Listen to some of the people working for you about warfighting.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me for saying it.
No. Everyone. It's politics or politics. When it comes, when it comes to people that are out of uniform, it's amazing. We've all seen it. What did Chuck Swannack do on his first day out of uniform after 33 years? The first day.
Wow, that's a great question. Well, I probably sat there in the sun and just basically took it easy and thought about, what it's going to be like being retired. Mm-hmm. And just to let your mind slow down for a second, let your heart slow down for a second, and just kind of get into a kind of a relaxing mode was what I tried to do.
Good.
And I try to stay kind of active, working to keep my health, my mental health, and my physical health in retirement. But it was just slowing down because probably when you took off your uniform, you're going 90 miles an hour. Then all of a sudden you got to get back to being able to talk to people at, 20, 25 miles per hour. And it's just different.
Yeah, you can't just yell at people speeding by the PX anymore. It's
That's right.
I remember my first job. Well, my first job was at NASCAR. I was a senior editor for NASCAR. But after about a week in, my boss came in and he said, Tanner, word around the street is that you curse a lot. I was like, he's like, no worries. He's like, I told him I hired a Marine. He's like, but can you work on it? I was like, yes, sir. Absolutely. I think for everyone, every veteran that gets out, there is an adjustment period when it comes to civilianizing yourself. Would you say that's accurate, sir?
That's very accurate. You got to be able to do that. Yep.
Mm-hmm. How were you able to do it?
I think the other thing about when you slow down like that, you got to become a better listener, because sometimes when you're with units and you got to make a decision, you got to vocalize a decision quickly and get people moving in the right direction. But when you become a civilian and the people around you aren't going to move if you bark at them, you got to just listen to them and then maybe use an indirect approach to get them to do what you want to do.
Yes.
Instead of asking them frankly, you can try it frankly, but if it doesn't work, you got to use an indirect approach and come around a corner and say, "Hey, wouldn't it be a good idea if we did this?"
Mm-hmm. Or make it seem like it's their idea.
That's right.
Exactly. Lead them towards their idea. Absolutely. Yeah. No, different leadership styles. Absolutely. The direct one is kind of not as prevalent as it. I think a lot of veterans, every veteran has to learn that. Now, for a while, sir, I read in your bio that you got into defense contracting. I mean, why not at that time? How did you go? But my question is, how did you go from a general in defense contracting, which many generals did at the time, to Charlotte Motor Speedway and an office mate of my buddy Willie?
That's a great question, because it kind of evolved. The first thing I did was as a senior and former, running Joint Readiness Training Center, I was pretty good at training. And so my first job was a senior mentor, and I did that for a couple of years, preparing brigade combat teams from the National Guard and reserves to go to Iraq or to go to Afghanistan, which was something that I really took seriously and I thought I was contributing to doing.
Yeah.
But then somebody goofed that up because they wanted to ask for all my investments, so I don't, they're not paying me too much or whatever, and something like that. And so I decided to go away from that. But I was blessed to be hired by a 1975 graduate of West Point by Ranger Aerospace, Steve Towns, to run a company. And this was a cool thing because back then our military was leaving their equipment, their vehicles at home base
Hmm.
and falling in on MRAPs, mine resistant armor protective vehicles in Afghanistan and Iraq. Well, somebody had to maintain the equipment, the vehicles left behind. And so that's what I had about 500 wheeled vehicle mechanics as veterans working for me in a $50 million company that was maintaining this equipment and refurbishing actually marine equipment at Barstow, California.
I was going to ask you if it was Barstow and Albany. You know,
Yeah.
that's where those two
We
logistics
didn't have
bases are.
Albany. We had Barstow. And then I also had some stuff at Fort Hood, Texas, working at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, some of the Army posts also. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then after I came out of that job, we got bought out and I made some money doing that.
I was going to say that means that it was a successful company when you get bought out.
It was, yes, sir. I met a gentleman by the name of Tom Sadler. He was an Air Force retired Major General, United States Air Force. He, during World War II, was a B-17 gunner.
Oh, wow.
During, in the Air Force. He got out, went to school, got his commission, came back in, and fought in Korea and in Vietnam. And he retired in about 1975 and hooked up with Bruton Smith, who was running Speedway Motorsports.
Wow.
And General Sadler started what was called Speedway Children's Charities, and he took it from a fledgling nonprofit to about $3.5 million a year in grants to kids programs around the eight speedways, the communities around the 8 speedways the Smith Speedway Motorsports owns. And I met him and he said, "Hey, stick around. I'll probably get you involved in this." Well, I had known NASCAR. Believe it or not, I was the Grand Marshal of the Coca-Cola 600 in 2004, just after I'd come back with the 82nd Airborne Division from Iraq.
I can only imagine
And
what that Coke 600 was like. The opening
oh, it
ceremony
was
and
packed.
everything.
It was like 120,000 people. Coca-Cola gave me the words to say. And he said, on behalf of the most important 4 words in motorsports history, I'll pass it to Baghdad. And the big screen TV at Charlotte Motor Speedway panned over to Baghdad, and the 1st Cavalry Division over in Baghdad said, "Drivers, start your engines." Oh, it was remarkably good.
I bet.
So anyway,
I bet the goosebumps were just, oh.
What I learned there is NASCAR is really a patriotic sport, believe it or not. You got all the flags there. You got the invocation. You got the fly over the aviation. And then you've got the adrenaline rush that you and I all feel in the military. Every one of us feels at some point in time in the military, the adrenaline rush like they do when the drivers start. I stood with an Army Ranger with 7 deployments on his belt down at the Atlanta Motor Speedway a year ago, and he got goosebumps on his arms from just watching the green flag go down and understanding the adrenaline rush. And the third thing is we got common rivalry like Army Navy football, Army Air Force football, Bravo Company, Alpha Company football. Well, you got, the Chase Elliott, Kevin Harvick rivalry right now. So I learned that. And then I just got one last segment to tell you.
Yes, sir.
Is that in 2019, Marcus Smith, Bruton's son, who runs Speedway Motorsports now, came to me and said, "Chuck, there's too many veterans out there committing suicide. There's too high a divorce rate, and there's too much homelessness. I want you to put together a program to try to turn those statistics around." And we generated what's called Welcome Home Patriots, where basically I get defense companies to sponsor our armed forces family members to VIP credentials at NASCAR races.
Oh, great.
And I got one coming up next weekend in Texas for the All-Star race. I got a company sponsoring 50 armed forces family members. And then here at the Coca-Cola 600, I've got another company sponsoring 120 armed forces family members.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the Welcome Home Patriots because I saw that in your bio and I was wondering what that was all about. But I kind of want to circle back to the Coke 600 because I've seen it a couple of times. I've been there, working for NASCAR. For those that have never been to Charlotte Motor Speedway for a Coke 600, with the name tapes on the cars, the opening ceremonies, and it's on Memorial Day weekend. Can you describe what that event is like? and how infused it is with Memorial Day?
Well, it's all about Memorial Day, and it's
Yeah.
all about honoring our fallen because we have members from all services, fallen members who gave the ultimate for our country are on the windshields of the cars. The Goodyear comes up with support the troops emblazoned tires. Normally, the paint schemes are some kind of camouflage or military tone. And just to kind of tell you, the atmosphere is during the pre-race activities, Lee Greenwood's going to come down with a wireless mic down through the crowd singing "God Bless the USA," and it's just it's over the top. Matter of fact, a lot of people don't know that there's three entities that the Department of Defense supports, sports entities. One's the one of the World Series games, one's the Super Bowl, and the third is the Coca-Cola 600.
I did not
So
know that.
we'll have 60 to 80 members from each one of the services here. We'll have a 4-star flag officer that speaks and tells this basically the state of readiness of our military and talks about our military. Each service talks about their military, and it's just over the top. Um, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you, when Lee Greenwood sings "God Bless the USA" and we start honoring our fallen with taps and a 21 gun salute, I'll tell you, tears come to my eyes every year. So
Yeah.
it's that emotional for all of us.
I used to take Marines down to the track, kind of my own little program, combat camera Marines, to show them different careers that they can have when they get out. How you can transition these skills into video producers or other video jobs on the track. And one of the things I always like going is taking those Marines through through all the shops there where all the cars are out there and all the paint schemes, because they have the name of a fallen service member on the cars. They have their main one that they're running for. They replace their name with the fallen service member's name. But a lot of them just get so many submissions, they just put they just put the names of every service member they pretty much get requested for on the cars. And um seeing some of those Marines react to some of the names that they knew, it was for me a very emotional time to be there at the track.
Yeah, I'll tell you just one quick vignette. I was down in the garage during practice, I think 2018 Coca-Cola 600, 2019. I think it was
Yes, sir.
2018. And number 42 car, driven back then by Carl Larson, came around the corner going out to practice. And I looked on the windshield and it had Captain Hampton on the windshield. And so they finished the practice and session. I went back there and talked to the chief of the crew chief of that car. That was Captain Kimberly Hampton, who died January 2nd, 2004. First female in the 82nd Airborne Division to die in combat during the Iraqi War, and actually the first female to die. And so those memories, some of those names come back and really bring back the memory. Well, that's what we're doing. We're memorializing all of those, and it's right for us to do that because they sacrificed for our freedom so that we enjoy. And I just hope we're living a life worthy for their sacrifice.
Yes, sir.
That's all we can do.
Yes, sir. When you saw that name, was it when you see names that you do recognize? I mean, you get to go there every year. You see it every year. You see names that you recognize sometimes. Is it cathartic for you to see that they're still being remembered in that way?
Yes, yes. Very. It's uplifting that we're still remembering. I mean, that's what we have to do. We have to honor them every year, and that's what Memorial Day is all about.
Yes, sir. Um, Now, one last thing I saw in your bio, sir, is that you're the president of the Patriot Military Foundation in Mooresville, North Carolina. And if everybody's been to Mooresville, it's kind of like NASCAR Central, a lot of race teams
Right.
and everything like
Right.
that. What's the purpose of the Patriot Military Foundation?
Patriot Military Family Foundation is basically there to enable uh, members of our military family who need help and try to give them the quality of life that most Americans enjoy every day. And people have hardships. We were started with a former Delta operator, this foundation, focused mostly at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, the paratroopers, and then the special operators in Delta. But we've kind of morphed it into all families, National Guard, any service or branch, but basically how we can help them and salute them and ensure that when they have a need that we can help them, with that need and get them. We've done a lot of dogs for service connected disabilities, veterans. We do helping veterans with housing along with Purple Heart Homes, which is also here in this state. And so we try to get at the nexus. I believe if we can get a veteran and their family, one in a home, in a job, their kids in school, and their folks, their family in church, if we get those four ingredients,
Mm.
that veteran family will do well. But if we miss out on a couple of those and they start feeling sorry for themselves and get alone, we got problems. And so we have to be on the lookout for that.
Gotcha, sir. It seems like your entire post-military career, once you got involved with the Speedway there, it's been a life of service. What's it mean for you during your transition to be able to serve in the ways that you have?
Well, just like what you're doing, I'm sure you get pumped up talking to veterans.
Yes, sir.
I get pumped up talking to veterans. I mean, I want to help them. Whenever I did a change of command ceremony, I said, if I can ever help you in any way, you reach out and touch me. And a lot of people have
Yeah.
reached out and touched me. And so I just get such a joy hearing from them, one, and two, just keeping up with them. And when I bring these families to a NASCAR race, and I get them down there in pre-race activities, and I give them some swag, I give them good food, put them in the suite, just to see the joy they're having is just enough to make pump me up, get my adrenaline rushing and making me feel good. And so I need those kind of doses too, like I'm sure you do.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely, sir. Sir, what's one thing that you learned during your time in the military that you apply to what you do today?
I think is what I talked about earlier, Tanner. I probably didn't listen good enough when I was in uniform. And what I tried to take away from that is uh, in the military, you got sergeants major that will help you understand what's going on. And you've got, privates that you talk to when you're out there visiting them and what they're doing will tell you what's going on. And I used to do that, but when I became a civilian, I didn't have any of those other networks. And so I think I found a way to really pay attention to what people are saying more so
Yes, sir.
and try to fill in that void, find out where they are and what they're doing and how their life is going and how I can pump them up or help them. So that's probably one thing I've taken away. I wasn't a good listener in the uniform. I did get feedback from my sergeants and folks, but I need to apply that now in my civilian role to be. I got to pick up on what's going on with people around me.
I love it, sir. I love that you're very reflective and you're always looking to improve. Um, Sir, we've covered a lot of ground. I- Is there anything that I may have missed or haven't asked? And think about the audience that's listening to this. Um, that you'd like to, is there a parting shot maybe that you'd like to share?
Well, I think I'm going to speak after the Coca-Cola 600 the next day in Kannapolis and give a Memorial Day speech.
Mm,
And as I think what's coming up for all of us, we really have to focus on those folks that gave their lives for us and talk about them. I'm going to talk about three. I told you about Captain Hampton. I'm going to talk about Sergeant Baddock, who was killed in action around Abu Ghraib prison in the canal,
mm,
trying to help trying to recover some people, National Guardsmen that had fallen in the water. And third, Lieutenant Colonel Mark Taylor, who was our division surgeon, who died in Fallujah, inside the Fallujah base camp when a rocket came in.
mm.
And I'm going to talk about these three and how, they were there in responding to a lot. But what really made them give their lives is not because of what oath they took to serve the Constitution. Probably the Constitution was the farthest thing from their mind.
Yeah.
What was on their mind was not letting their buddies down. That's where sacrifice really comes. In the military, we start out as a self, but right after the first couple of days of training, we understand self is gone. It's all about team, team, team. And so I think if we, as Americans going into this Memorial Day weekend, let's get back to thinking we're all on the same team. We're not divided. We're all on the same team trying to promote America. And so, when somebody needs help, let's help them. But come on, let's live a life worthy of the sacrifice of those who gave their lives for our freedoms. That's what I'm all about.
Sir, I couldn't have ended this any better myself. Well, thank you so much, sir. Appreciate your time. Happy Memorial Day. And we are out.
Thank you, sir.
We gotta get them one way or the other. Machine gunner, fight, bullets fly, day and night rain. Simplify till we die, another campaign. My desk is a rock where the drug lords cut up millions. My pen is a 7.62 round that'll cut them down in an instant. Point, click, pull the trigger to the tune of falling brass. Full benefits and a purple heart and a Russian-made bullet in my bag. Raining down lead, punching that clock. Get 'em boys, I'm laying down cover. Machine gunner, fight, bullets fly, day and night rain. Simplify, do or die, another campaign. Here we go, lock and load, 0331, lug 1,000 rounds, and I ain't bringing back one.